where are the referees? I mean, how long do people whose 2- and 5-year-old children have been taken, how long do they have to wait until someone advocates for their legal rights?
The challenge here, and one of the things that is most frustrating about this sequence with Liam, the 5-year-old, the 2-year-old that Michelle told us about just moments ago, to me is, and if you think of it, let's use the referee analogy. Let's think about, we're watching the NFL playoffs, right? There's a pause for replay review. Sometimes it takes a few seconds. Mm-hmm. Why the rush? We can talk about this narrative or that narrative, and there are clearly competing narratives here. But here's an objective fact. Liam was in Minnesota and is now in Texas. Why the rush? What was the absolute urgent exigency that required them to be on a plane to Texas basically immediately? No, to your question, no chance for anyone to take a breath, anyone neutral, and it's the same, and we're seeing it in the context of these warrants. If an administrative warrant, if ICE can sign its own warrant and then turn around and say, well, then, that's enough. That's not a check. It's not a balance. It's literally the exact opposite. It is acting as the judge in your own case. And so what I would say to the referee question is, why can't we at least take long enough for replay review? Why in the world does Liam need to be in Texas right now?
Yeah, I mean, Rev, it does feel like the people are there. It's an extraordinary act of courage, as I said at the top. They're also filling a vacuum, and I wonder, who should be rushing in there? I mean, this has got the attention of the nation. Who should be rushing in there right now?
Who should be rushing in there?
Yeah, I mean, with lawyers on the ground. I mean, there are law firms that have done horrible, stupid, shameful deals with Donald Trump, and they're working for his Commerce Department. He's sitting at about 32%. Maybe some of those people should quit their law firm and go get on the ground here and defend protesters getting rounded up.
Well, you can start with those lawyers, but you can also say that people in the state that are elected officials, the governor and the attorney general, have stepped up. Now they announced that they're under federal investigation. So we're seeing a real ugly era of intimidation even when the elected officers of a state, if you dare say something, we're going to put you under federal investigation, there's nothing there, but it'll cause you expenses, cause you all kinds of problems, because we don't want anyone to stand in the gap. If you look at the last half century of United States protests from the 60s, the Vietnam War, the civil rights, all the way to what we did with racial profile, it was always the government, state or federal, that would intervene and sort of mediate and try to bring this on course. Even when Donald Trump was president the first time, George Floyd happened when he was president. I was in the leadership of that. He didn't behave like this. They are closing every door, demonizing and criminalizing everyone, trying to push this to some end that no one can figure out. All we know is ugly and catastrophic. And I think when you're seeing 2-year-olds and 5-year-olds are not even beyond the pale, then we've come to a real decadent point in this, in how we scale morality in this country.
Yeah, I mean, Tim Miller, to the Rev's point, there's been a wall of resistance at the state level and local level. And I know you interviewed Mayor Fry. Tim Walz, I think, deserves a lot of the credit for having this connection with his own constituents. He has been urging peace since the minutes after Renee Nicole Good was shot and killed. And the Attorney General, Keith Ellison, as a result, as the Rev said, they've all now been targeted for harassment by Trump's Justice Department.
Yeah. And they continue to call for peace. I don't know, yesterday, the vice president came to Minneapolis, and a lot of the news outlets said that he kind of moderated his tone or whatever because he didn't, call Renee Good a domestic terrorist and extremist like he did the week before. But I mean, he came to town and basically called the local officials liars. He said
Yeah.
that the local officials aren't working with them, that they are only invading the city because they're not doing their job, that the police officers in Minneapolis who have said they were racially profiled were lying, which is not true. Or, I guess from my vantage point, if it's a he said between J.D. Vance and, a local sheriff in Minneapolis, I'm going to listen to the local police officers, believe that they're telling the truth about what happened to their officers. So, J.D. Vance comes in and maligns everybody, impugns all of them, and Jacob Fry, last night I saw posted on Instagram that he hasn't even contacted them, right? So he comes to town, he lies about the local officials, he doesn't contact them. Like, they're not interested in de-escalating. Like, they want confrontation, and I think it's pretty impressive, frankly. Both the citizens, but also the local officials have had such restraint and such commitment to doing this peacefully in the face of these masked thugs coming to town and trying to menace them, and the federal government lying about them.
Michelle, what are your sources and people that from covering them, and just people that what do they feel? How do they think this ends?
I've asked that question to several people today. I'm in touch with Minneapolis and St. Paul and people really all throughout the state all the time. And I was wondering what breaks the fever. And I don't know if you're hearing that chant right now, but the thing that people are saying more and more, both as constitutional observers and at the protest, who will save us? We will save us. The people of Minnesota feel like they are on some sort of beachhead, and that it's really up to them through peaceful protest to do this. Al is right. The fact that this has been so disciplined and peaceful is really extraordinary. And just to note, the folks in Minnesota were saying it's not that cold. It's really cold. I mean, They were talking about the temperature. They weren't talking about the wind chill. The wind chill this weekend is supposed to go down to 47 below zero. I mean, that's when you can get frostbite within 5 minutes. That's when your eyelashes freeze. That's when your mouth doesn't work anymore. And they're still going out and they're still doing this. To James's point, though, the legal system is being revealed at this moment to be so incredibly fragile. Our legal system depends on people of goodwill doing the right thing. And there have been attorneys that have been meeting regularly now in Minnesota to talk about the barrage of lawsuits that most certainly will be coming down the pipe, but also to figure out how to work as lawyers in a system where the rule of law no longer applies. They're ignoring constitutional rights. They're ignoring legal writs. They are operating with sort of a new mandate and a new protocol that seems to be blind to the traditional rule of law and people's constitutional rights. And that's a very scary place.
Yeah, I mean, two things. I just want to speak to a couple things that people are seeing with their own eyes. There are a lot of signs that quote Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Fry, his choice language that say F ICE. We are not putting them on TV on purpose. Neither are we keeping them off your screens. But if you have little ones around, we are sorry for the F words there. That is what's happening. And we thought you should see it. The other is to the cold. One of the protesters has a frozen beard. So there's a pluckiness about the weather, but also incontrovertible as it is really, really cold. I want to ask you a follow-up question about the law. So a judge told Gregory Bovino, to stop using chemical irritants against protesters. We saw him throwing a chemical irritant at protesters. He uses this smear, I won't repeat it here, to describe people who are not illegal. They are here as they're in the legal system, and they are asylum seekers who have legal status. What do you do when the agency in charge is not following laws and judges' orders?
It is such an important question, such a difficult question, and it speaks to what Michelle was just talking about. In fact, you want to talk about connecting two seemingly very disconnected stories, but that I think are absolutely connected. The last paragraph of Jack Smith's opening statement yesterday, which is obviously nothing, on its face, nothing to do with Minneapolis, nothing to do with immigration, none of those contexts. In that last paragraph, he says, and I'm quoting here, "I have seen how the rule of law can erode My fear is that we have seen the rule of law function in this country for so long that we have come to take it for granted, but the rule of law is not self-executing. And what Michelle is talking about there is that a huge portion of our legal system doesn't depend on follow the law. It depends on the norms and the interstices that bind us together. And one of the interesting things is, in both of the sort of interviews from the people on the streets there that we've seen so far in this hour, we heard the same word. We heard community. Well, a huge part of community is norms, right? And so the answer to legally speaking, the answer to your question is oversight, which would mean Congress, which I think we both know is not going to happen. But the community answer is norms, and what Jack Smith was saying yesterday, that it is up to us because it's not self-executing.
Let me just be the voice for agency. And I mean, it could happen if every single donor to every single Republican said, I won't give you another dollar until you stop supporting a lawless ICE that has, our investment in the Republican Congress looking like a lost cause because you're all going to get wiped out. They would jump like that. I mean, the only people they're more responsive to than Donald Trump's insane middle-of-the-night musings are their donors.
To Tim's point, we need to see them stand up the way these people are standing up.
They don't even have to get frozen beards to do it. I want to bring everyone back in. I believe I have to get to break. Is that
FBI Director Kash Patel and sworn testimony he recently gave before Congress. And a lot of online commentary is turning that testimony into explosive headlines. You may have seen titles claiming that Patel admitted crimes or that his statements are creating legal danger for President Trump. The reality is more complex, but still very serious, and it's important to understand what is actually happening without the exaggeration. Patel did not stand in front of Congress and say, I committed a crime. That's not how testimony works. What he did do was describe under oath actions he took as FBI director, including personnel decisions and document handling, and legal analysts are now debating whether those actions, as described, could raise questions about obstruction, abuse of authority, or civil service violations. The controversy is coming from how his own words are being interpreted by legal experts, lawmakers, and observers. One major area of concern involves the firing or reassignment of certain FBI officials who had worked on sensitive investigations in previous years. Patel acknowledged that personnel changes were made and that those decisions were influenced by broader leadership priorities. Critics argue that if such decisions were politically motivated rather than based on performance or policy, that could conflict with federal civil service protections. Supporters argue that an FBI director has broad authority to reorganize leadership and set direction for the agency. The legal debate centers on whether those decisions cross the line from management into retaliation. A second area involves Patel's acknowledgement that he followed internal guidance about how certain investigative records should be handled and when they could be released. Lawmakers questioning him suggested that these delays may have affected congressional oversight. Patel responded that he was following established internal processes and legal review standards. Here again, the disagreement is about interpretation. Critics see possible document suppression, while Patel frames it as compliance with internal policy and legal caution. Because this testimony happened under oath, every word is now being analyzed closely. Members of Congress have publicly questioned whether Patel was fully transparent in his answers. Some have even raised the possibility of perjury or contempt if they believe his statements conflict with other evidence. Those are accusations at this stage, not findings, but they raise the political temperature significantly. What makes this more politically sensitive is Patel's long-standing reputation as a close Trump ally. He was appointed to the position by Trump and is widely seen as someone the president trusts. That connection means that any controversy surrounding Patel's testimony naturally raises questions about whether the decisions he described were made independently or reflected broader direction from the administration. This is where the political stakes rise, because even without direct evidence, the optics alone create pressure. Some commentators have claimed that Trump is privately angry about how far Patel went in describing internal memos and decision-making processes. There is no verified way to know Trump's private reaction, but the political logic is clear. Testimony that raises legal questions for a senior official can create complications for the administration as a whole. Legal experts point out that testimony like this can matter long after the hearing ends. Even if no immediate action is taken, the record now exists. If future investigations, lawsuits, or congressional inquiries revisit these events, Patel's sworn words will be part of that record. That is why this moment is being taken seriously by analysts across the political spectrum. There is also a lawsuit filed by former FBI officials who claim they were improperly removed from their positions. Their claims align with some of the issues raised in Patel's testimony, and together they create a narrative that critics say suggests politically influenced decision-making. Patel and his defenders deny wrongdoing, but the overlap between testimony and legal complaints adds weight to the debate. The key point is this: the viral headlines saying Patel admitted crimes are overstated. But the underlying story, that his sworn testimony is being interpreted by some legal experts as describing actions that could be legally questionable, is real and significant. This situation highlights how powerful sworn testimony can be. You do not have to confess to wrongdoing for your words to be examined later in a legal context. If your description of events matches the elements of a potential violation, investigators and lawmakers will notice. For Trump, the issue is political as much as legal. When a close ally describes controversial decisions under oath, it invites scrutiny about how those decisions were made and who influenced them. Even without proof of direct involvement, the association creates pressure and headlines. Ultimately, what happens next depends on politics as much as law. If Congress chooses to pursue the matter, if courts weigh in on related lawsuits, or if future administrations revisit these events, Patel's testimony could take on greater importance. For now, it stands as a record that both critics and supporters are using to argue very different conclusions. The dramatic commentary online exaggerates the story for clicks, but beneath that exaggeration is a genuine legal and political debate about authority, accountability, and how power is used inside federal law enforcement.